from the Brush and Boltgun. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to paint gold trim on cloaks. Now this is ideal for figures where you've got plenty of gold on the actual armour, like normal metallic gold. I'm going to be using a non-metallic gold to paint up the cloak trim, and this will make it look golden without it clashing with the rest of the gold. If you'd like to support the channel, my Ko-fi and Patreon pages are linked below. Now on to the video. So this is the effect for the gold trim on the cloaks, and this is what we'll be working on through this video. The first colour we're going to use is Citadel XV-88. All we're going to do is paint all of the trim on the cloak with XV-88. So you've got on the front cloth here and around the edges of the cloak itself, and the trim on the back of the cloak. We're just going to paint all of this with a nice smooth layer of the XV-88. Next we're going to add some Citadel Screaming Skull to the XV-88. Now we're just going to start adding this to the areas where you've got the lighter colours on the cloak. So you can see quite clearly the areas that have been highlighted on the cloak, and that's the areas that we are going to be adding this layer to. So basically you want to have the shaded areas where it's shaded on the cloak, and the highlighted areas where it's highlighted with the cloak colours too. Again, we're going to add more Screaming Skull to the previous mix. We're just going to move this highlight area in a little bit so you've got all of the previous layers on show. Now it is a little bit different to the way you usually paint. You usually do the shade as the second layer, but the shades come later on when you're doing this kind of gold trim. So you're just painting this over the other colours that you've put on, but leaving the other colours showing around the edges, so you're going to get that gradient from XV-88 up to the final colour, which will be white. Once more, we're adding more Screaming Skull to the previous mix, and this is going to be to do another smaller area of highlights on the areas that you've just been doing. So again, every time you do these highlights, you want to be bringing in the area that it covers, so it's smaller and smaller with every layer, so that you can see all of the previous highlight layers beneath that, or rather around the edges of it. We're now going to add some more Screaming Skull to the previous mix, and again do another layer of highlights. You'll be pleased to know that we are coming to the end of these highlights with the Screaming Skull. Got one more mix to go and then it's just pure Screaming Skull, so nearly there. Adding a little bit more Screaming Skull to the previous mix one final time, just to do the final layer of highlights with the mixes. So you have quite a few different shades of the Screaming Skull and XV-88 mix here, and that gives you that nice blend from the dark XV-88 up to the light shades which are on the crests of all those creases, where you've got that lighter colours on the cloak itself. Now we're adding some pure Screaming Skull. You're just going to add that to the very crests of the top, doing a little bit of a highlight on these. It's not very much area at all that you're doing with this, so it's quite a quick layer. They're starting to get quicker and quicker now. Just doing a few little thin highlights with this shade. We're going to mix a little bit of white with the Screaming Skull now. Just do an even smaller highlight on each of these sections. And finally, just using a tiny little bit of pure white to do the final highlight layer. This will just be a very, very small area on each of these sections. Now I'm going to use a little bit of Citadel contrast to snakebite leather. I'm going to work this into the recesses to darken those down. So you want this as sort of like leaving a little bit of XV-88 at either end of the areas that you've highlighted, and then shade this so that you're leaving some of that XV-88 in between the snakebite leather section and the highlighted sections you've already done. So within the recesses, you're now going to add a little bit of Citadel Grax Earthshade. That just gives it that little darker shadow in all those recesses. We are using Citadel Cassandora Yellow, and this will give it that nice yellow gold colour. So you're just painting a really thin layer of this over the whole of the trim. So obviously make sure that the Grax Earthshade and the Snakebite Leather are dry before you start doing this, or you'll end up with some strange streaks and ridges and things like that in the shades. But you just want to give a thin layer of Cassandora Yellow to all of the trim, and that will yellow it up quite nicely. We are now going to use a little bit of Citadel Screaming Skull and Vallejo White. So if you've still got some of the white and Screaming Skull mix left, you can use a little bit of that. I'm just going to touch up the top of the crests with this over the Cassandora Yellow. You can see that gives it that nice almost shine to it. And finally, just a small bit of Vallejo White, or whichever white you use, just to do some tiny little highlights at the crest of those bits that you used the Screaming Skull on. This will just give it that final little bit of shine to make it look like it is that material shine on the trim. So this is the finished cloak and how the gold trim looks on that. Really pleased with how that turned out, but it's a nice way to add a different kind of gold to your miniatures. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Also, think about subscribing to some of our other social media, linked below. Thanks very much. If you like the channel and you enjoy the content and you'd like to support me, my Ko-fi and Patreon pages are linked below. Thanks very much.